This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am here today with winemaker Karim Mussi, who is joining us all the way from the darkness of winter in Argentina, in La Consulta, in the Uco Valley. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. And very happy to be part of this invitation. So thank you, Morgan, and thank you for everybody there, especially all the good friends of Good Food Revolution that permit us to be part of your invitation.
Super, super. Now you are, as I said, right now in La Consulta, and that is kind of where you began your winemaking journey, is it not?
Yes, I started here 22 years ago. I was a young winemaker, only 24-year-old and a few kilos less. But my dream, my winemaking dream started here in a paradise that is part of the Uco Valley. It's a great area where I think the benefit of having a lot of old vine availability, pre-phylloxera original rootstocks, the tradition of winemaking here, and also the growing conditions that makes the vine growing to be on an ideal place in terms of efficiency, of quality and concentration. I'm glad to say that we work in a paradise, and we always have the commitment of doing great wines.
Now, 22 years ago, that particular area, La Consulta, was not very well known in the market for producing grapes for wine, but many of those grapes would have been taken back then and used to add both color and structure to the wines from warmer regions. Is that correct?
Correct. And a part of color and structure, also quality.
Yeah.
Because this cool area, all the Andean provinces at the foothills of the Andes, we share the same growing conditions of high mountain deserts. So we have a lot of very poor soils, very poor alluvial soils. We have a very low rainfall, very sunny days. We irrigate here thanks to the water that come from the melting snow from the Andes. So the place is unique all around the country, but specifically this area is one of the coolest area where the ripeness period is longer because the temperature difference between day and night it's huge. So here the fruit ripes very slowly, and it created very thick skins, keeping the freshness of the natural acidity. So a part of the phenol concentration that we can reach here, the quality, the elegance, the typicity of the fruit permit us to make world-class wines.
You mentioned older vines. Some of your vines there go back to the 1920s or thereabouts, and I believe they were originally planted by the Italians.
Yes, or even older.
Wow.
La Consulta, it's very Italian. Argentina is very Italian in general, but specifically this area was developed originally for the Spanish colony, because here La Consulta belongs to the San Carlos County. That is the oldest county in the province, where the border between the Spanish colony and the native Indians from here this is the southern part. So technically Patagonia started here 100 years ago, but the availability of water, the quality of the soils made La Consulta a very well place for farming in general. But the viticulture was specifically developed by the Italians. Everything here is ruled by Italian families, and they really had the vision to keep that original material that they brought from Europe, or we had from the 19th century when Aimé Pouget brought all the Bordeaux varietals plus the Tempraneros that we have here, plus the Bonarda or Corbeau Noir that they brought from Italy, that it create all this richness and diversity of varietals in Argentina. So La Consulta is in the center of that area, and that's why we have a lot of history and a lot of very old vineyards, very old vines, pre-phylloxera rootstocks that are the true witnesses of the local patrimony.
Now, you mentioned Bordeaux grapes. The two wines that you make that we have in market under the Alandes range, the Paradoux White and Paradoux Red, are both very Bordeaux inspired. Why did you choose to go down that route?
Well, two reasons. One was a rational reason, a very technical reason. The reason that it's, well, Bordeaux blends in general are world-class wines and very accepted for most of the average palates. When you drink Cabernet Sauvignon or any other Bordeaux blend, you don't have to explain anything to any customer. Your palate in Canada or our palate here in South America or in China or in Europe, it's a benchmark. It's something that it's a standard of quality, it's a standard of flavor that everybody understands. And the second reason that it's very irrational, or it comes also as almost as a joke. In 2012, when we bought Alandes and we started with the Alandes project, we had the challenge of deciding which will be the next profile, the next program or aesthetics for our wines, for a new winery, different from Alto Cedro, different from Abras. So while most of our colleagues were exploring the limits, the borders of the local winemaking, we said as a joke, well, why don't we return to the roots, to the basis of being the most Bordeauxian, the most classic traditional style, so we can be as disruptive possible, the most disruptive possible, being very classic. So we said it's like being or invited to a party of hipsters in a big city like Montreal or any big city in the world, New York or something like that. And we went dressed very classic. We arrived dressed to the party with gray pants, brown shoes, blue jacket. So
Karim, your allegory doesn't really work that well up here, because that's what hipsters wear sometimes up here.
well, that's why, because we became better.
You became okay. Yeah.
Also, the beer is
right. So one thing that I found quite interesting, you were talking about being disruptive, and it certainly is in the fine wine market. You've chosen with both of these Paradoux blends, they're both non-vintage wines.
Yes. Well, we have like most of the things in the wine industry happens by mistakes or problems, weather problems or legal problems, wars. But here we released the first Alandes Paradoux in 2012, and immediately we received an opposition by a local brewery, the largest local brewery, against the Alandes brand, because there's a very well-known beer here called Andes, like the Andes Mountains that we have here on our back.
Alandes just means along the Andes, does it not?
Along the Andes, yes. So yes, we have to, we have a legal problem. We were sued by them, and it took us almost 3 years to solve it, to reach an agreement and demonstrate that we were not using Andes, specifically the Andes as the name of the mountains. We were using the concept of doing wines along the Andes.
Yes. Yeah.
So once we reached the agreement, I realized that we had the 2013, 14, and 15 vintages together.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to just take the 13 that was older and more oaky,
Yeah.
or not over oaky, but it had more barrel age than
Yes. Yep.
the 14 and 15. So we did blindly. We decide blindly the best lots of barrels of each varietal of the 5 red varietals and the 5 red Bordeaux varietals: Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. So the final blend was the true selection of the best options between 3 different vintages. So we start guessing, okay, how we are going to tell the people, or how we are going to register legally on the label. So some of the people here said, well, we should lie. We should say it was 13 or 14 or 15. So, well, we should not lie. We should tell the truth, saying, well, this is a blend of 3 different vintages. Because we had the problem, we couldn't release it earlier, or at the moment that it should be released. So let's make a non-vintage. But it's not a problem. It's a reality, and it's a reality of our decision of doing the best blend possible, combining the best individual lots of 3 different vintages. That's how the non-vintage concept started. So the Alandes Paradoux, the 2 Paradoux, red and white, they are multi-varietal, multi-vintage, multi-varietal, and multi-appellation. So that is the column, the 3 columns that define the concept of the Paradoux collection.
Now, does that influence the way that you have to label the wine under Argentinian wine law?
Exactly, but it's easier because you don't need to certify anything. You don't need,
Right,
it's less paperwork.
Yeah.
It's less bureaucracy, so we love it.
So it's really kind of education with your customers, right? And to let them understand that this is a wine of quality, despite the fact it is multi-vintage.
I love the concept of airplanes. Commercial airplanes, you know, they have the triple check system. So it's almost impossible to commit a mistake as a pilot, as a captain, or as an airline, if you follow the triple check system. Here we implement our own triple check system, doing the best blend possible, not knowing 3 things: the vintage, the varietal, and the barrel lot, or the origin of the vineyard, that it goes to an individual barrel lot. So we make the best wine possible, the best blend possible, not knowing those 3 elements. So we have this triple check to create the best wine possible.
And your red Bordeaux varieties and your white Bordeaux varieties, the Semillon and the Sauvignon Blanc, they're all vinified separately, right?
Yes, they are not co-fermented. The Bordeaux varietals are, because imagine the Merlot is early peaking, the Cabernet Sauvignon or the Petit Verdot, they are late peaking. Cabernet Franc and Malbec are mostly in the middle. So we pick them separately, we ferment them apart, and they age apart, and we make the blend right before the bottling. And the Bordeaux, the white varietals, the Semillon, it's late peaking, and the Sauvignon Blanc is early peaking.
Yeah.
So normally they have like 2 or 3 weeks difference. The Sauvignon Blanc, it's fermented and aged in barrels, and the Semillon, it's also fermented and aged in barrels. But the Semillon, it's a pergola trellising system. We call it here Parral. And the Sauvignon Blanc is a normal line trellising system. So we have 2 completely different growing conditions. So we manage the ripeness or the picking moment differently. And after they age, they ferment first and age in barrels later. We put them together right before the bottling, but always keeping, in the case of the whites, because the whites we realized we had a second situation or a second problem that we transform it into a benefit. For the reds, we can age it longer than a year because we have plenty of barrels. But for the whites, you know that you cannot use white barrels for white wine or red wines.
Yeah, yeah.
You just have to keep it only for whites. So we need to empty the barrels for the next vintage.
It's interesting you're saying that, because I was about to ask, you must have an awful lot of barrels.
Yes, we cannot keep it empty until the next vintage.
Yeah,
So
of course, yeah.
we take the wine out, we rack the wine out, yeah, and we leave the barrels ready for the next vintage. The used barrel plus the percentage of new barrels that we are buying every year. But that wine, for me, with only 12 months, with only 1 year aging, is not enough for the style that we developed for that classic Bordeaux white blend. So we always kept a percentage, 10, 12, 20% of previous vintages that we are blending. So 2/3 or I don't know, 70, 80%, it belongs to the last vintage, and the other percentage come from the previous vintage that we continue aging for years.
It's almost like a Solera system you've got going on.
A Solera system,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
It's like a Solera system that we kept around 20% of previous vintages, all combined, all as a single blend, and that overage percentage get combined with the 1 year old juice that we got from the latest vintage, and that always permit us to have the right or the proper amount of flavors coming from the barrel, from the aging, from the oxidation, the beautiful oxidation that the barrel provide or supply us. So it tastes older because we combine 2, 3, 4, 5 different vintages on the same blend.